Imagine I place this guitar in your hands right now where you're sitting, and you don't even know how to hold this thing. You don't, let alone play anything on it. But in 10 minutes, you're strumming your very first chords, and you're playing a beautiful piece of music as a group. Would you be amazed that you could achieve all that in such a short amount of time? Good. Well, the one thing about music learning that is not a doubt is that it has the power to unleash our greatest potential. I didn't know anything about that power. I thought guitar was something you did in order to just be cool and get all the chicks. That's what I thought, at least I guess I was wrong. But before that, I actually hated this thing. I hated the guitar. My mother at age 11 forced me to go to this group guitar class in Harlem to make sure I was doing something productive and staying off the streets of Washington Heights, Manhattan, born and raised. So, I hated the class. My friends were listening to hip hop, R&B. I didn't hear guitar in those songs at those times. I don't know. But I just wanted to be cool like them, and guitar was not the cool thing to do. So eventually, after a year of inconsistent teachers and swinging this guitar on like a lightsaber with one of my, who is now like my brother, Rafi, who's not here today, I told my mother, no more. We're not doing this guitar no more. But then, one day I heard a song on the radio, and it goes a little something like this. I took a walk around the world to ease my troubled mind. I left my body lying somewhere in the sands of time. I watched the world float to the dark side of the moon. I guess there's nothing I can do. I don't know if you know that song, but that's Three Doors Down, Kryptonite, when it first came out. And I heard it on the radio because my brother was always an avid listener of different genres of music, and he always had the radio on. So I was like, oh, this song is pretty cool. And I was like, oh, this song has a guitar in it. And I said, oh, crap, I got a guitar. So I grabbed the old thing, dusted it off, and then I was there. I was like, okay, cool. Now we're going to play, and I'm playing along with the song as best as I can. And when I did it, I locked in that one note right there, and that changed everything for me. Everything. Just so you know, guitarists, it's the D note on the B minor chord, so if you know, you know. So I decided to go back to the guitar class. And at that point, I met my teacher, Alonso Perez, who was actually the most consistent, stayed with us amidst all the chaos that was going on in the class, and also he saw something in me that I didn't. And so he taught me my very first chords, he taught me the basics of reading music, and little tips and tricks to sound cool just like him. And so, fast forward a little bit, I auditioned for LaGuardia High School of the Arts, and I got in for violin, even though I went for guitar. So I had to self-teach myself for the next 4 years, anything on the guitar, which was pretty much all the heavy metal and rock that was introduced to me by my social group at that time. So, by the way, I'm leaving out a very important part of the story. I was highly undisciplined, and I was a terrible student in school, so I have no idea how I graduated high school, and sometimes I wonder how the hell I graduated college. So, speaking about college, that's when the next phase happened in my life and my journey. My orchestra teacher at the time, Joseph Myers, he goes, hey man, so what are you gonna do for college? And I said, I'm gonna do guitar. And he's like, cool. I don't think there's a university for heavy metal and rock guitar unless you go to Berkeley, that's gonna cost you a pretty penny. And I said, well, I guess I'm screwed then. God, always. So at that moment, he said, well, hold up a second. There is this thing called classical guitar. You should look into it. And so I was like, okay, well, I don't know what the hell that is. I was never exposed to it. Nobody talked about it. And, this type of guitar is prominent in our Latin culture, in our Latin music. And I never got exposed to it because in my family, my household, music was just a hobby. You don't take it serious. You don't focus on it. So in my curiosity, I was like, you know what? I'm going to be a rock star anyway. So let me do the rock star thing, but also find a safe path to have a safety net, right? So I decided I'm going to be a music teacher so I could teach all day and then play rock and roll at night. So I went back to the class and I asked Alonso, I was like, hey, do you know anything about this classical guitar thing? He's like, I'm not a classical guitarist, but I'll teach you what I know. So he did. And at that moment, we ended up going, I was following my ex-girlfriend at the time, or my former girlfriend, and we ended up going to CW Post, auditioning there. Now, mind you, I didn't have one of these yet still. I was still on an electric guitar. So I had a heavy metal guitar, all weirdly shaped, a BC Rich Mockingbird with an amplifier, and I'm standing in line in CW Post over here, and all the other students are looking at me like, all weird. They're like, what are you doing here? I'm like, I'm here to audition for guitar. They're like, are you sure you're in the right place? Now I get why they said that. They all had their nylon strings, their footrests, and their sheet music with them, and I didn't. I guess I didn't get the memo again. So somehow I got in, but here is where my undisciplined self comes in. So I get into college, and I do the bare minimum to do my lessons, and I'm slacking off in school, I'm partying, late nights, no early mornings. So long story short there, I pretty much did terrible in that school and ended up leaving because I found out that CW Post was a private school and still cost a pretty penny. But I didn't know anything at the time. So we ended up coming back to the city. I went to City College first semester, and guess what? They only have a jazz program. I'm like, I just started classical. I can't, what's going on here? So my brain exploded. I stayed there for a semester, and I ended up following my former girlfriend at the time again, saying, she's like, let's go to SUNY Fredonia, audition there, and SUNY Potsdam, Craner School of Music. So I said, okay, fine, whatever. And I did it, I auditioned, and I got denied from both. Great. So I get a phone call from the SUNY Fredonia distinguished guitar professor of classical guitar studies, James Perkowski, remember the name. He calls me, he tells me in my best gym voice, hey, Jahzeel, just giving you a phone call because I know you were probably denied. And in my head, I'm like, thanks for rubbing it in. He's like, no, but I just wanted to call you, let you know that I reversed that decision and you're in. So where did I go? I went to SUNY Fredonia. My former girlfriend went to Potsdam. You know how that ended. Anyway, so as I'm in Fredonia, James Pierkowski, the name I asked you to remember, imagine a cool, calm, collected, wiser older gentleman who had an aura about him, who always found a way to inspire you. And he always had a way of teaching that was so nurturing. And he was always found ways to tie life into metaphors, into analogies, quotes from people, always found ways to show you how to overcome and achieve success in your problems, right? Musically or in your own personal life. And he made sure that you understood how to do that. But my undisciplined ass, dumbass as well, I just continued doing the bare minimum. I just continued to slack off and party. So guess what? Jim gave me a warning. He said, get your shit together or you're out. So I got it together for about 2 weeks, then went right back to the same old habits. Then I went back to Fredonia the next year. And guess what? Nothing changed. I was still being my same old undisciplined self, partying and doing all that. Now this time, as I'm going into my private guitar lesson with Jim, he goes and he tells me to sit down. Now normally, a guitar lesson with Jim, you just go in, you sit down on your bench, you take out your guitar, and you start tuning up and warming up so that way you can prepare, right? Normal stuff. He tells me not to take my guitar out. And I said, okay, something is up here. So at this moment, Jim closes the door slowly behind him, sits on the bench right across from me, and he looks me in the eye and he says, Jahzeel, music is not something that you just do. Music is something that you embody, something you eat, something that you breathe, something that you sleep, something that you digest. Music is a lifestyle. And I don't think you're about that life. So I strongly recommend that you change your major. At that moment, my heart sank to the pits of my stomach. We all know that feeling. And my brain started racing. And I started thinking about all the other things that I may be good at. And I'm like, man, I suck at science, I suck at math, I suck at history, I suck at English, all that stuff. And I'm not passionate about it. The only thing I'm good at is guitar. So after getting booted out of my lesson, and then soaking in my grief, and I was drinking some beers and some whiskey, rock and roll style, I had my epiphany and I asked myself, why am I not putting my all into something that I love? And at that moment, I decided to flip the script. I started putting my work into learning guitar and music. And once I did that, all the doors opened for me. I got into the top quartet, the Fredonia Guitar Quartet, which is like the school's golden ensemble that represents them. And we ended up playing a tribute concert to Roland Diaz, who at the time was, rest in peace, one of the top performers, classical guitar arrangers and composers. And we did a tribute concert to him. He was in the audience just like you. And then he loved the performance so much, he gave us a standing ovation, wrote a piece dedicated to our guitar quartet, and then opened the doors to do a world premiere of that piece in Germany and France, Europe. Me, a young Latino boy from Washington Heights, never thought I would go and step foot across the pond in Europe. But music took me there. And when we were there, I'm telling you, we lived a rock star life. We were being driven around by Jim. And, we were posters plastered of us everywhere. We were shutting down restaurants. We were sightseeing, doing everything that rock stars do. And wow, what a feeling that was. And that changed everything for me. And at that moment, on the plane ride back, Jim hands me a napkin, one of the airplane napkins, with writing on it. And it said, "The FGQ rocked Europe. Why? Because you put in the hard work and it was met with opportunity." That is when the journey started in my head. I said, I have to bring this back to the students just like me in New York City, in public school systems, in Washington Heights, and present them with this opportunity about mindset. And that's what it was. Ultimately, it was the positive habits and mindset that helped us achieve this. And so I'm bringing this back to our students in New York City. I graduated Fredonia. I came back. I worked for the Department of Education. Didn't work out too well. Then I worked with some not-for-profits that I was introduced to. And I had a vision of how to teach the guitar and the guitar programming. I wanted it to be nurturing and all about mindset of positive habits, like James Perkowski taught me and saved my world with it. But they didn't see the vision, and they told me, "You're not going to make a living off of this." And I said, "Well then, fuck you," because that pissed me off. And I walked out. So again, whiskey and beer in the mix with a good buddy of mine. I'm pissed off. I'm venting to him, and we're already inebriated. I'm like, "Man, these guys." He's like, "Why don't you just start your own, man? Screw it." And I'm like, "You know what? Hell yeah, let's do it. Screw it." So we stumbled our way through the internet, and we found good old LegalZoom. And guess what? We incorporated something there. I didn't know what it was at the time. Woke up the next morning, and I said, "Oh shit, what the hell did we just do?" I just had a baby. And that baby was named Internal Creations. It was a nonprofit. Thank God it wasn't a real baby, because I would have been even more screwed at that time. And I didn't end up in jail, so that's a good thing. So me, a musician. I went to school to be a musician and an educator, not to be an entrepreneur, a business leader, or anything. But I became one. And I realized that because of the positive habits and the mindset and the life skills that I learned through learning my guitar in college and post-college, that's the reason why I'm able to lead an organization today. So after 10 years of the school of hard knocks, that's still whipping my ass, and I got a degree in that one, I'll tell you, I'm able to lead this organization 10 years in. And we are continuing to impact students all over New York City and now New York State, giving them the positive mindsets. Myself and these students didn't know how to navigate life. But now, with these mindsets, with the guitar training, with the outlook of life and how to overcome your challenges, students are getting into their dream colleges, they're leading organizations, and they're inspiring the next generation of young leaders. We are here and we are musically creating each other. We are Internal Creations, where the guitar will take you far. Thank you.